जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीर वनचारी। यमुना तीर वनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जय राधा गिरिधरी श्री राधे। जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रा। जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय। जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद। जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव। Prabhupada,
Hari Hari Bo. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Before going ahead, so again, I just want to thank the devotees. In spite of all my inqualifications, they've given me this opportunity, all you kind devotees. Again, I take it as an opportunity to try and remove some of the little, many impurities in me. So before that, I'll just chant the prayers for the Mangalarchana. ओम पवित्रो वा सर्वावस्थां गतोऽपि वा यस्मरेत् पुंडरीकाक्षं स बाह्य अभ्यन्तरं शुचिः श्री विष्णु। ओम अज्ञानातिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जन शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्री गुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्री गुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्री रूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजन सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीन बंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabho Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatripatam Maham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Shri Gurum Dinataranam Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanabhaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangre Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So before going ahead, just to remind myself, whatever little bit I am able to utter, little bit we are able to discuss, it's only thanks to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, without whose immense contributions throughout his life, we would not have access to any of this great literatures. So before going ahead, so we'll continue with the Leelamrita. So I think this is where we stopped yesterday from Mataji, as you mentioned, Dr. Zakir Hussain, is it?
Yes, Prabhu, it's all right.
Yeah. So I'll just start reading from here. Yeah. Dr. Zakir Hussain, Vice President of India Road, I have read your book, Srimad Bhagavatam, with great interest and much profit. I thank you again for the kind thought which must have prompted you to present it to me. The favorable reviews, although Bhaktivedanta Swami could not pay the printer with them, indicated a serious response. The book was valuable, and subsequent volumes would earn the series even more respect. By Krishna's grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami had already completed many of the translations and purports for volume 2. Even in the last weeks of printing the first volume, he had been writing day and night for the second volume. It was glorification of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and therefore it would require many, many volumes. He felt impelled to praise Krishna and describe him in more and more volumes. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had said that the presses of the world could not print fast enough the glories of Krishna and the spiritual world that were being received at every moment by pure devotees. Bhaktivedanta Swami decided to return to Vrindavan for several months of intensive writing on volume 2. This was his real business at Radha Damodar temple. Vrindavan was the best place for writing transcendental literatures that had already been demonstrated by the previous Vaishnavacharyas of the past. Living in simple ease, taking little rest and food, he continually translated the verses and composed his Bhaktivedanta purports for volume 2. After a few months, after amassing enough manuscript pages, he would return to Delhi to once again, enter the world of publishing. Should we stop here, Prabhu, or should we continue?
Yes, that's fine, Prabhu.
Okay.
You can stop.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So wonderful, what a wonderful inspiration, life of inspiration. Yeah. So before going ahead, we'll just briefly cover the history thus far, what the other devotees have already covered in the previous sessions. So we've been describing Maharaja's Prithus. After performing all his duties so wonderfully, he is preparing to go back to Godhead. So the final pastimes of Maharaja Prithu. And we saw how he distributed his opulences, assigned responsibilities to the various descendants before giving up his responsibilities and going to the Tapovana. And there we saw how the immense regulations and the immense austerities he was leading, so of retired life, not just relaxing, and controlled his mind, speech, senses, and for whose satisfaction? Krishna's satisfaction. And he was following the path advised by the previous acharyas. And basically, this devotional service, when he practiced it so nicely, it helped him to transcend the material conception of life. And then we saw how he, even though he was already a Shaktiyavaya Shauchar, he was doing this to set an example for others. So he set an example of how pure devotional service to be performed to Krishna in the retired phase of life. And finally attained the Brahmabhuta platform. And then he was raising the life air by the yoga process, from the Dhyana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga process. He was raising the life air. And then finally, we saw how the devotees described how we merge the material components back into the Mahat Tattva. That is the essence from which the entire creation is coming. See, merge the material components there. And so now we'll go ahead. And now we'll see this 4:23:18, how he released himself from material designations. Yeah. So everyone able to see the screen? Yeah. So
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, you can
yeah.
see.
So I'll just read the thing. 4:23:18. So tam sarva guna vinyasam jive maya maye nyadhat tam chanushayam atmastam asa anushayi puman jnana vairagya viryena swarupastoj ajahat prabhu. Any of the other devotees want to kindly chant this verse?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam Prabhu.
Tam sarva guna vinasham jive maya mayena nadat tam anushayam atmasthanam aso anushayi kuman jnana vairagya vidyena sarupastu ajahat prabhu.
Any other devotee?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes.
Tam sarva guna vinyasam jive maya maye nyadha tamo chanusayam atmastham vasaunusayi puman jnana vairagya viryena sarupasto ajahat prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna
Thank
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yeah, kindly.
Tam sarva guna vinyasam jive maya maye nyadhat tam chanushayam atmastham asaunusayi puman jnana vairagya viryena sarupasta jahat prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. Can one of the devotees read the synonyms, word to word meanings?
Hare Krishna, I try.
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. Tam unto him, Sarva Guna Vinasayam, the reservoir of all qualities, Jive unto the designations, Maya Maye, the reservoir of all potencies, Niyajat, placed, Tam, what, Cha, also, Anusayam, designation, Atmastan, situated in self-realization. So, he, Anusayi, the living entity, Kuman, the enjoyer, Jnana, knowledge, Vairagya, renunciation, Vidyana, by the prowess of Sarupya Stha, being situated in one's constitutional position, Ajahat, return home, Prabhu, the controller.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. One of the devotees read the translation as well.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Prithu Maharaj then offered the total designation of the living entity unto the supreme controller of illusory energy. Being released from all the designations by which the living entity became entrapped, he became free by knowledge and renunciation and by the spiritual force of his devotional service. In this way, being situated in his original constitutional position of Krishna consciousness, he gave up his body as a Prabhu or controller of the senses. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, the purport of the first paragraph, one of the devotees can read. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As stated in the Vedas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the source of material energy. Consequently, he is sometimes called Maya Maya, or the Supreme Person, who can create his pastime through his potency, known as the material energy. The Jiva, or the individual living entity, becomes entrapped by the material energy, by the supreme will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 1861, we understand Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Ridi Deshe Arjuna Tishtati Ramayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rudani Mayaya. Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is situated within the heart of all conditioned souls, and by his supreme will, the living entity or the individual soul gets the facility to lord it over material nature in various types of bodies which are known as yantra, or the moving vehicle offered by the total material energy maya. Although the individual living entity jiva and the Lord are both situated within the material energy, the Lord is directing the movement of the jiva soul by offering him different types of bodies to the material energy, and thus the living entity is wandering throughout the universes in various forms of body and becomes implicated in different situations, partaking of the reaction of the fruitive activities. Hare Krishna.
The devotee read the next paragraph. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I am ready.
Yes, Prabhu.
When Prithu Maharaj became spiritually powerful by enhancement of his spiritual knowledge, jnana, and renunciation of material desires, he became a Prabhu, or master of his senses, sometimes called Goswami or Swami. This means that he was no longer controlled by the influence of material energy. When one is strong enough to give up the influence of material energy, he is called Prabhu. In this verse, the word Swarupastha is very significant. The real identity of the individual soul lies in understanding or attaining the knowledge that he is eternally a servant of Krishna. This understanding is called Swarupopolabdhi. By culturing devotional service, the devotee gradually comes to understand his actual relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding of one's pure spiritual position is called Swarupolabdhi. And when one attains that stage, he can understand how he is related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a servant or friend or as a parent or conjugal lover. This stage of understanding, this stage is called Swarupostha. Prithu Maharaj realized Swarupa completely, and it will be clear in the later verses that he personally left this world or his body by riding on a chariot sent from Vaikuntha.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else wants to read the third paragraph?
I think I did.
Yes, Prabhu.
In this verse, the word Prabhu is also significant. As stated before, when one is completely self-realized and acts according to that position, he can be called Prabhu. The spiritual master is addressed as Prabhu Pada because he is completely self-realized soul. The word Pada means position, and Prabhu Pad indicates that he is given the position of Prabhu or the Supreme Person of Godhead, for he acts on behalf of the Supreme Person of Godhead. Unless one is Prabhu or controls the senses, he cannot act as a spiritual master who is authorized by the Supreme Prabhu or Lord Krishna. In this verse, praising the spiritual master Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, Saksha Dharit Vena Samatsa Sasri Uktas Tatha Bhavyata Yasa Saddhi. The spiritual master is honored as much the Supreme Person, Supreme Lord, because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. Thus, Prithu Maharaj can also be called Prabhupada, or as described here in Prabhu. Another question may be raised in this connection. Since Prithu Maharaj was a power incarnation of the Supreme Person of Godhead, Sakti of thought, why did he have to execute the regulatory principle in order to become a Prabhu? Because he appeared on this earth as an ideal king, and because and because it is the duty of the king to instruct the citizen in the execution of devotional service, he followed all the regulatory principles of devotional service in order to teach others. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although Krishna himself, taught us how to approach Krishna as a devotee. It is said, Apani Achari Bhakti Sikhao Sabare. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed others in the process of devotional service by setting the example himself through his own sacrifice of thought incarnation, till we have exactly as a devotee in order to achieve the position of Prabhu. Furthermore, Swarup Saha means complete liberation, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita 2, Srimad Bhagavatam 2.10.6. Hitvanayat Rupani Sufena Vishwatati. When a living entity abandons the activities of Maya and attains a position from which he can execute devotional service, his state is called Sirupsta or complete liberation.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
Prabhupada.
What a wonderful purport. Let's read the translation once again. Thank you so much. What a wealth of information. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Prithu Maharaj then offered the total designation of the living entity unto the supreme controller of the illusory energy. Being released from all designations from by which the living entity became entrapped, he became freed by knowledge and renunciation on the spiritual force of his devotional service. In this way, being situated in the original concentration position of Krishna consciousness, he gave up his body as a Prabhu, or a controller of senses. Guru Gauram Girisheshtam Yovishtam Vena Sarite Madhavam Tulasi Rama Krishna Kirtinjiram Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishta Vishnu Bhakti Vishnu Madhav Santi Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishta Vishnu Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine. Hare Krishna. Thank you once again, dear devotees, for this opportunity. So, what a purport packed with information. So, here again, Prabhupada very nicely he describes how we are traveling, literally traveling on a machine through space and time, on a machine provided by the material energy, which in turn is controlled by the Supreme Lord. So, in many verses, we see this, where Prabhupada has quoted the 18.61, where he says, Yantra Rudhani Maya. So, we are going in this vehicle provided by the Supreme Lord. Even in the Madhya Lila, 19th chapter also, it says, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bridge. So Bhakti Lata Bridge is very far. But in the meantime, we are Brahmanda Brahmite. We are just going around in the Brahmanda, in the space and time, through using this material, this vehicle, what the Lord has wonderfully provided. So even in the 13th chapter, so when the Lord is describing the Kshetra and the Kshetragya. So he says his body is the field. Our body is the machine on which we conduct all our activities. And this material designations, here in this verse, there's a lot of mention about material designations. So this entire material engagement, literally, if you are in the machine, we are completely surrounded by the machine. And this we tend to think that we are the machine. So it's so wonderfully designed, wonderfully implemented, that it completely bewilders us and makes me think that I have become the machine rather than that I am sitting in the machine. So here in the 6th canto we say this, Bhukshetram Jiva Samyam Yad Anadi Nija Bandhanam Adrishtva Tasya Nirvanam Kim Asat Karmabhir Bhavet. So he says the higher Shwas, they are listening to Narada, and the word Bhu refers to the field of activities. This material body, essentially, it is made of earth, of course, with other elements, and it's a result of our previous karma. And because of that, it is giving me so many false designations. Since time immemorial, I have been just changing from one body to another. And because of this, I am more and more I am tied to this material world. And still foolishly engaging in the same activities, thinking that I am the machine. And similarly, even in the 5th canto, wonderfully, in the 11th chapter, it is said, Dukkam Sukham Yatiriktam Cha Tibram Kalopapannam Phalam Avyanakti Alingya Maya Rachitantaratma Swadehinam Samsmriti Chakra Kuta is. Chakra Kuta, he calls it the wheel, and that wheel is tricking us into being sucked into the wheel, sucked into the whirlpool. So why? The materialistic mind. My own materialistic mind is carrying me to different species of life. Due to my mind only, I am suffering. Due to my mind, I am so-called enjoying. And due to my mind only, I am put into illusion. And more, I'm getting conditioned, more engaged because of my material designations, thinking that I have become the machine. So again, the 4th canto also, Mamaitre Manasa Yat Yat Asav Aham Iti Bruvan Grihiniya Tat Puman Radham Karmayena Punar Bhavaha. So the living entity labors under the bodily conception of life. I am this, I am that. My duty is this, I shall do it. So constantly I'm busy with the so-called self-created duties. All mental impressions, samskaras coming from the past. And all the activities, whatever I'm doing, are all temporary. All are temporary. But he is saying the Supreme Lord is so kind, In spite of all my concoctions, he's saying, okay, continue with your concoctions. No, he's so kind. He's not preventing. He's saying, okay, you continue. I'll give you more and more bodies. You continue with what you want to do. He's not trying to stop me. And all these material designations, they are superficial. It's not. I've got nothing to do with this, but I don't realize it. No? Na yat purastad utayan na paschan madhye cha tanna vyapadesha matram bhutam prasiddham cha parena yat yat tad eva tatsyat iti me manisha. So he said very nicely, he said this material body did not exist in the past. In the future, very soon, in a few years, my material body won't exist. So what does it mean? If something doesn't exist in the past, doesn't exist in the future, it's only a designation. It's only a temporary label. No? Temporary label, like when I go to some conference, I'm wearing a label. After the conference, I'll remove the label. So it's only a superficial designation. So ultimately, it's only the pradhana. From the pradhana, everything comes. To the pradhana, everything goes. And the pradhana ultimately comes from the Supreme Lord. And in contrast, the Lord is described as Maya. No? He is the controller of Maya. He is the controller of Maya. And in the Bhagavatam, very nicely, in the 5th canto and the 3rd canto, with the Maya, it said, the Lord is not just the controller. When he says Maya, he says it's full of affection. He's full of affection for the living entities. So he doesn't have too many expectations of the living entities. So he's telling, okay, the living entities want to play around in the world. So he's giving them all the facilities. He's giving them so he's got so much love and so much affection for the living entities. Maya, that's how it is described. In both the purports, Prabhupada said, he says, Karuna Prachur, Prabhupada says, Karuna Prachur, he says, is full of mercy for all the living entities, whatever level they may be from, whatever mode of nature they may be in, the Lord has only love for all the living entities. And in contrast, the Lord is described as the reservoir of all qualities in this verse. Again, in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, very clearly it is said, Ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasas chaye matta eviti tan viddhi natvaham teshu temai. So Lord is saying that all these states of being, because all the qualities come only from these 3 basic colors, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the Lord is saying they're all manifested by His energy. And He is not under these modes. He is not under goodness or passion or ignorance. All these modes emerge from Him. All these different qualities emerge from Him. Again, in the 10th chapter also, He says the same thing. All the various qualities, what all we see around us, everything comes only from the Lord. Whether it is intelligence, knowledge, and forgiveness, truthfulness, whatever qualities, good or bad, we see around us, it's only due to the transformation of what the Lord giving us a facility. We want to acquire a so-called bad quality, the Lord is giving us a facility to acquire that. And we'll see the mechanism by which He does that. It's so wonderful, that mechanism, by it's such a simple mechanism, it's actually a very complex mechanism, but simple ingredients, and He gives us the facility to live all our conceptions. Because He is the magic and the supreme magician. He is the supreme magician. This entire world is Maya, and who is the controller of all the magic? Maheshwara, the supreme Lord. In the Svetashvata Upanishad, it is mentioned. And the Lord is so kind. No? He says, the master of the city, he says, He calls us the master of the city in the 5th chapter. Prabhu. He calls us Prabhu. Even though we are in a conditioned state, He calls us Prabhu. Na kartatvam, na karmani, lokasya srijati prabhuhu, na karma phala samyogam, swabhavastu pravartate. No, He is giving us a long rope. He's saying the embodied spirit, master of the city of the body, does not create activities, nor does He induce people to act. So He is having hope on us, even though we are in a very deeply conditioned state. He still very respectfully is saying, calling me Prabhu. No, He's saying, oh, the living entity is Prabhu. He has nothing to do, but he is just thinking. He or she is thinking that he is become the body. And we'll see this process of creation and dissolution of the material entities. The Lord, in the Bhagavatam, in the 2nd canto as well as in the 3rd canto, it is described. And Prabhupada also says it's important to understand this, because we have to know how the problem emerged. Only then we can solve the problem. No? So the semantic structure of the material world in the 15th chapter, the first two verses, it is very nicely described. No? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Urdhva Moolam Adha Shakam Ashwatam Prahur Avyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Vedasa Vedavid. So this entire whatever material conception we see around us, whether it is the body, whether it is the macro, whether it's the universe, he says it's like a Ashwata tree, banyan tree, and the roots upward and the branches down. And so the banyan tree, we can see it is so complicated, so complicated. We don't know where the banyan tree ends and where the banyan tree begins. So even the second verse, he says that. Adas chordvam prasvitastasya shaka guna pravriddha vishaya pravala adascha moolani anusantatani karmanu bandhini manushya loke. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature, the three basic colors by which everything is made. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. So by this very little seed, the seed of Pradhana, the entire huge banyan tree has emerged. And the cause and effects. So he's saying the 11th canto, he says, we should be very intelligent to see the cause and the effects. We should be able to distinguish between the cause and effects and also see the similarity between the cause and the effects. So again he says, Naivaka ekadasha panchatri bhavan bhuteshu yenavai iksheta aikam apyayeshu tagyana mama nishchitam. So he says, so knowledge, we should see the knowledge. The Lord says here, we should see the combination of the 9, 11, 5 and the 3 elements in all the living entities. Ultimately, one element among the 28, he says. Very nicely in the purport. So we may not have time to go into the detail. The purport, Prabhupada very nicely describes these 9 elements. So the material nature, living entity, Mahat Tattva, false ego, and the 5 objects, sound, touch, form, taste, and aroma. And 11. What are the 11? He says 11 is the 5 working senses, 5 knowledge carrying senses. And what are the 5 other elements? He says is earth, water, air, fire, ether, and those five basic material elements. And the 3 is the goodness, passion, and ignorance. So combine all this. There is then he says apart from this, unless the Supreme Lord is there, nothing else of this will manifest. Nothing. It will just remain in an unmanifested state. So we should see all this as ultimately the Supreme Lord's mysticism. All this creation, what we see around us, and including our own material bodies. And here in the second canto, as well as in the third canto, very nicely it is described how the creation of the material entities, creation of this material universe. So it is said the starting point is the pradhana, the base, the root of everything, pradhana, which again the source of pradhana is the Supreme Lord, and this pradhana is the unmanifested nature of the combination of all these elements what constitute this material world. And this pradhana, when it is disturbed by the force of time, the kala, then the mahat tattva emerges, the mahat tattva. And again, different authors have described it as mahat tattva is the essence of greatness actually. So mahat tattva is the potential all the living entities have, all the living entities. And in the mahat tattva, we acquire different potentials based on our own ego, because the Lord has given us this identity. And based on our ego, we acquire different mixtures of this goodness, passion, and ignorance. And that ultimately defines our identity. More of goodness, then we'll have a particular identity. More of ignorance, I'll have a different identity. So just by the having this different thing, and again, it is called as morality. No? When somebody is in the pure goodness, then he is filled with duties. He is always thinking that I have to do all these duties for the universe, and he is not bothered about his rights. And when I am in the mode of ignorance, I am constantly thinking about my rights, what I can grab from the universe, and I'm not thinking of returning anything to the universe. So, but ultimately, we are all a mixture of these 3 modes. So different mixture of duties and rights. And from the pradhana, when it is disturbed by this force of time, then the mahat tattva. Mahat tattva is the essence of greatness. And from that Mahatattva, because of these three elements, that is the basic elements, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the banyan tree starts growing from that. So the mode of goodness, when it disturbs the Mahatattva, then he says the mind emerges. The mind of the living entities emerges, and the demigods which control the mind. And then when the mode of passion, it disturbs the Mahatattva, then all the activities, then all the different sense organs, that is the knowledge acquiring senses, and as well as the action senses, the hands, legs, and these kind of action senses, the genitals, the excreting sense, all these senses come up. And then when the mode of ignorance, it affects his ego, right? Everything, the root is the ego of the living entity. And when the mode of ignorance affects the ego, then from there the basic elements come out. And then he says the first element is the ether. And from the ether, it has got the quality of sound. From the quality of sound, the ether comes out. And then from the transformation of this ether, then the next one, that is the air, and the quality. And what is the quality of air? Is the touch, the sound, and then the touch. And from the quality of touch only, air comes out. So it's very nicely, it is said, the modern material scientists, they believe that from all these material elements, then that has given rise to the various senses, the sense organs, and then the consciousness. But actually, it's the other way around. The basic unit is the basic origin is the consciousness, or that is the ego. And from the ego, these things have come out. And then by the transformation of the air and touch, then the next sense is the sense of form, the fire, and the sense of form, and the fire comes out. And then the transformation of the form and the sense of and fire, then the next thing comes out, the sense of taste and the liquid, the water is the sense of taste. And by the transformation of that, indeed, finally the sense of smell, and then the earth. And here Prabhupada describes that each of the senses has got includes the qualities of all the previous senses. So, for example, air will include the quality of sound, and then if you include the fire includes the quality of sound, includes the quality of touch, and if you have the water, includes the qualities of the previous elements. If you come to the earth includes the qualities of all the previous elements, and then this is how the material bodies form, and only then the sense organs and all the other things form. The basic thing is the ego, and from there all these things form. So you just see, from a simple seed, the entire thing has come out like a Pandora's box. The entire thing has emerged, and see, it is from a seed emerging the banyan tree is one thing, but putting back the banyan tree in the seed, that is a totally different matter. So the mental conceptions creates all these bodies, what we see around us. And in the 15th chapter, it says very difficult to perceive this. So we have seen this happening around us. Every day we see this happening around us. But because we are so engrossed, because I am so engrossed in the day-to-day, I'm totally, it's impossible for me to perceive that this is happening, around me. And no place in the universe is immune to this. Even if you go to Brahma's world, the Lord says, even if you go to Brahma Bhuvanal Loka, Punar Avartino Arjuna, he's saying there also the material concept is there, because again we are constantly changing bodies. So what to do? So we have opened this Pandora's box, and from this little seed of Pradhana, this entire complicated banyan tree has come out. So how to control it? So it's almost next to impossible. How to break out of the cycle? And the breaking out of the cycle, it says only by giving up the material designation. So in the Madhya Leela, 19th chapter, 170th verse, it says, Sarvo Upadhi Vinirmuktam Tat Paratvena Nirmalam Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate, it is said. No? Bhakti or devotional service, meaning engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service to the Supreme, there are two side effects. one is freed from the material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. And realizing our true designation. Realizing our true designation. In the Madhya Lila also, it is said in the 13th chapter, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he advises Sanatana Goswami. He says, Naham Vipro. No? He says, I am not a Brahmana, I am not a Kshatriya, I am not a Vaishya, I am not a Shudra, I am not any of the Brahmachari or the Grihastha, Vanaprastha or Sannyas. I am only a servant of the servant of the servant of the Supreme Lord. And even in the second canto, in the 10th chapter also, in the 6th also it is said, Nirodho Syanu Shayanam Atmana Saha Saktibihi Muktir Hitvanyata Rupam Swarupena Vyavastitihi. So Muktir Hitvanyata Rupam Swarupena. When we are situated in our true designation, only then we can give up our false designation. And Swarupena, Prabhupada in the purport, he says, it is when we are situated that in the position as the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. And the true identity of the living entity is in many verses. It is very nicely described, the true identity of the living entity. So in the 20th chapter, 108 and 109, so Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nityadas, Krishnera Tatastha Shakti, Beda Prakash, Suryamsha Kirana Yaiche, Agni Jwalachai, Swabhavika Krishnera Tina Prakara Shakti Hai. So it's a living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna and a manifestation one and different from the Lord. Beda. No? Beda, the entire philosophy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, Beda. Achintya Beda. No? One and different. The Lord also says in the Bhagavad Gita also, no? He says, actually they are all my eternal parts, he says, no? The living entities. But in spite of being my eternal parts, in spite of being permanently related to the Lord, still, because we have forgotten the relationship, because of that, I am struggling with my senses and the mind. And how do I begin? I got a long way to go. So the beginning, the Lord says, it's only by controlling the senses. And again, in the nectar of instruction, the first verse also, we see that unless I start controlling my senses, I have no hope of even starting to break out of this cycle. Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jihva vegam, udaro pasta vegam, etan vegan vishaheta diraha, sarvam apima, prithvimsa shishya. So, due to my ego, due to being disturbed by the three modes, somehow I have acquired all these different senses. I have acquired of this. I have acquired the organ of speech, I have acquired the mind. Then, because of the mind, the anger. Then, because of the various sense organs, I've got the urge of my tongue, urge of my belly, urge of my genitals. So how to this banyan tree is come out from the seed? How to control that? No? So again, Srila Rupa Goswami says, only when I tolerate this, when I develop this tolerance for the urge to speak, the mind's demands, actions of anger, and urges of my tongue, belly, and genitals, only then I have any hope at all. And how do I do? So I think it's an impossible goal. But the Lord says it's only by practice. When even Arjuna asks him, he says, only by suitable practice and suitable detachment, only then I can break out of this, he says. And then in the verse, he talks about the weapons of knowledge and renunciation, jnana and vairagya. So these two words come together in different verses of the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So we see in the third canto, it is said, Jnana Vairagya Yuktena Bhakti Yuktena Chatmana Paripashyati Udhasinam Prakritim Cha Hataujasam. So he says, in the position of self-realization, the practice of knowledge and renunciation. That is, in spite of being completely immersed in this material world, whether I am not affected by my surroundings. No? One sees everything in the right perspective. He becomes indifferent to material existence. Even though I'm immersed, whether I'm able to be indifferent. And the material influence acts less powerfully upon it when I try and by the practice of knowledge and detachment. And even in the third canto, 25th chapter, 43rd also, Jnana Vairagya Yuktena, Bhakti Yogena Yoginaha, Shemaya Pada Boolam Me, Pravishanti Akuto Bayam. I think yesterday Prabhu also quoted this verse. The yogis incubed the transcendental knowledge and renunciation and engaged in devotional service for their eternal benefit, take shelter of my lotus feet. And since I am the Lord, they are thus eligible to enter into the kingdom of Godhead without fear. The Lord is telling this. And same thing he says in the 15th chapter also. No? 15th chapter, he says, only when we give up our false designations and acquire the true designation, only then we have a hope of cutting down this huge banyan tree, which we have created because of our own ego. And devotional service is ultimately the means and the end. In the 6th canto also, we see how automatically it grants us knowledge and detachment. We don't need to separately strive. But just by following the simple practice of devotional service, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhaktim Udva Hatam Drinam Jnana Vairagya Viryana Na Chi Kaschit Yapashrayaha. So it says people engaged in devotional service to Lord Vasudeva Krishna have naturally perfect knowledge and detachment from this material world. So such the devotees are not interested in so-called happiness or so-called distress of this world. So only by this I have any hope of not being disturbed by my material surroundings. So, and same thing is emphasized even in the 1st canto. Devotional service backed by knowledge and detachment. It's not, otherwise it becomes, he says it becomes just fanaticism. No? Even Prabhupada says, when there is religion without the philosophy, then it becomes fanaticism. We're just following some practices just because our previous generations are following it. It is not backed by knowledge and detachment. And again, when we say detachment, again, the Madhya Lila says it is as per the time, place, and circumstance. It is not blind detachment. No? In the 23rd chapter also, it is said, Yukta Vairagya Sthiti Sabha Shikaila, Shushka Vairagya Jnana Sabha Nishedila. So that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then told Sanatana Goswami about proper renunciation according to particular situation. It was not fanaticism. He was nowhere talking about being fanatically saying, give up this, give up that. And the Lord forbade dry renunciation and speculative knowledge in all respects. And so finally, when we do this, we can give up the body as a master. In the Ishopanishad, in the 17th verse, very nicely, it is described. Vayur anilam amritam athedam basmantam shariram Om Kratosmara Kritam Smara Kratosmara Kritam Smara in the Ishopanishad. So it is said, let this temporary body be burnt to ashes and let the air of life be merged with the totality of air. Now, O my Lord, please remember all my sacrifices. And because you are the ultimate beneficiary, please remember that all I have done for you. So this is a classic purport by Srila Prabhupada here. Very nicely, this entire thing he has summarized. Like whatever we are talking about today, there's this purport the Prabhupada has summarized. It's quite a long purport. I think everybody has already read this, but it's again and again we can read this where very nicely he says how somehow or the other we acquire this identity, and by practicing the devotional service, how we can acquire our true identity. We have acquired a false identity. Just like yesterday Prabhu was saying, like Abhimanyu, very easily he could enter the Chakravyuha, and getting out is becoming a very difficult. So somehow very easily we have entered this Chakravyuha because it's like unstable equilibrium. No? Very easily we tend to be disturbed and come in and be disturbed by the 3 modes. And even slightly I am disturbed by the 3 modes, I am just caught up. I caught up in this whirlpool of material existence as I have seen this process of creation. But coming out is totally different matter. So it is and that's very nicely this has been described in this purport. And the great masters have done it before. We are not alone. Bhishma's example is given in the Bhagavad Gita, even though until the very end he was involved in material activities. So till the very end he was doing all his material duties, but finally he was able to break out of it, and the Lord himself personally came and delivered him. And similarly, we see even Parikshit Maharaj. His entire life was led in serving serving the entire world. Actually, he was the king of the entire world. But finally, he was able to, due to the mercy of his spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami, was able to break out of the cycle and go back to Godhead. So the others have done it, so we can do it. And the Lord assures the same in the Bhagavad Gita as well. In the final verse, he says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. So he says, always think of me, always become my devotee, worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So I just wanted to conclude with that by saying how we have somehow or the other we have created this huge. We opened the Pandora's box and allowed this banyan tree to come out due to our own ego, and how by following the practice of devotional service we can put the genie back in its bottle and acquire our true identity. So I just wanted to conclude there. If any of the other devotees want to add or comment or correct anything, kindly do so.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Wonderful class, Prabhu.
Thank you.
The whole creation and the infliction of the creation and how to get out is so nicely explained through the sequence of operations or sequence of happenings in our life, and they clearly mention how we came into the world and how we got these qualities and how to relieve of this painful situation and live this world. So nicely mentioned with so many examples, very clearly understandable and easy to make out, but it's very difficult to easy to understand, but very
difficult to implement. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
that's why it is practice. That is the only way. Whatever we have, the moment we entered into the world, we are clutched by this, all these activities of the world. But the thing is, we need to be out only by following steps of the previous acharya, not blindly, but with a proper knowledge. And that all will help us to come out of this situation. And then knowledge is acquired only by following the processes, that is practice. And ultimately, as Bhagavad Gita 1865, Manmana Bhava Madbhakta Madhyadi Mam Namaskuru Mam Yashyasi Shattante Pratijani Piyamyash. So this is the process. Only by doing this, we can come out of this entanglement of this world. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing the points, Prabhu. Thank you. Any of the devotees want to add anything? Sorry, it went about time.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you very much. As usual, very nice class. You have showed us from the beginning how we have deviated from our own Swarup, we have deviated from there and got this material body, and now we are in a cycle of birth and death, repeated birth and death. We are struggling, and how we can go back to by realizing our own position or Swarup. These false designations we have acquired, how we can get rid of it. You have very nicely explained what are the different things available and how acharyas have told. It is very easy, but at the same time very easy and very difficult to realize at the same time. So thank you for the very nice class. And by following by proper knowledge and renunciation, we can make our devotional service successful by following the instruction of the spiritual masters and other Vaishnavas. If we follow that, we can, it will automatically take place if we have faith in our Guru and the Parampara. Hare Krishna Prabhu. That is my realization. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing the points, Prabhu. Thank you very much. There's no other point. Should we close here? If there's no other.
Yeah, it appears there's no other.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu. So such a whirlpool of quotation to back up all the creation and how the living entity can be being, how it can release itself. Such a nice references were given.
Thank you.
In this purpose, what Prabhupada mentioned about Vishnu Maharaj, although he was a secular avatar,
Yeah.
he underwent this process.
Correct.
So he's mentioning that because he was teaching by example.
Correct.
So sometimes it's a bit difficult. How can seculars have to do all this tapasya to get
Yes.
released in the process? So maybe we can shed some light. I mean, it's sometimes baffling because Maharaj had to go, if Maharaj go to undergo this studies to give this example.
Yeah. So, like, why he did the austerities? You mean? Is that the question, Prabhu?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what yesterday also we were just thinking. Like, why did he have to do? And also he was in the pure devotional. He was a pure devotee. And why did he have to follow the Ashtanga Yoga path? Yesterday we're thinking. So that's we're thinking. It's as per the time and age, because in that age, this process of chanting and even though the present age is chanting is the prescribed way, in that age the process was Ashtanga Yoga. So he was setting an example, because the Lord, each according to his ability, each according to his need. So the Lord, in those days, the people were very much capable. So the Lord also was demanding more from them. You know, he's saying they have a long lifespan. They were able to focus their attention and practice Ashtanga Yoga. So the Lord says, yes, if they have a good capability, then you definitely do Ashtanga Yoga. He says in that age. And so Maharaja Prithu, being in that previous age, he said that so that he could set an example for others. But in the present age, because we are not capable, so the Lord also is not asking us to do this Ashtanga Yoga, because he knows that I am not capable of that. So he's saying, okay, for your level, you do this nicely, and that is equivalent to that. He's saying equivalent to whatever those great personalities have done previously. It's out of his own kindness. So that's my understanding. Any other devotees want to add? Because in those days, the Ashtanga Yoga was a process, and that's why Prithu Maharaj followed it. That is my understanding. So if any other devotees want to add that, add anything or correct what I've said.
Thank you, Prabhu. Such a nice explanation. Yeah, he just wanted to set the example according to the age.
Yeah, that's the lady.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you for once again for the nice class.
Thank you, Prabhu.
And you have rightly told that. To us also it appears that it's correct that whatever, as you have told, the time, place, and circumstances for each age, the Lord has also prescribed different methods. Otherwise, it would not be same. It would have been same for all ages.
All the yugas, yes.
But it is different. So it indicates that what you have rightly pointed out, that that the Lord wanted to make the process according to circumstances.
Correct.
And so in that age, it was they had got a very long life. So Lord also asked for devotional service in that way. But in the present age, people have very small life, 100 years only. And so and the circumstances are also very against all evil things.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you once again, Prabhu, for the
you.
very nice explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. So yeah, if there's no other quick comments or questions, we could end here.
Yeah. Vancha
Kripa Sindhubhyo Patitanam
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
His Grace Poshak Madhav Prabhu ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All devotee Vaishnavrinda ki jai. All devotees to assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.